What would you do if one night's mistake followed you for the rest of your life? One night with a billionaire to save her mother. Before we continue, please subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new video. It was very poor. She lived in a tiny house with her sick mother Mama. Every day, Oge walked many miles to work as a cleaning lady in a huge mansion. It belonged to a very rich man called Chief Emeka, who had so much money that he could buy 100 cars if he wanted to. She cooked food that smelled so good it made everyone's mouth water. Even though she was tired every day, she never complained because she needed the money to buy medicine for her sick mother. "Oge, you are too beautiful," said Adana, another maid who worked in the mansion. "The way you smile, the way you walk, the way you talk so nicely to everyone. It makes us other girls feel jealous." But Oge just laughed kindly. Every Friday night, Chief Emeka invited his rich friends to eat dinner in his mansion. These men were so wealthy that they owned big companies, tall buildings, and fancy cars. When they came together, they talked about money the way children talk about toys. Whenever Oge served them food and drinks, all the rich men would stop talking and watch her. Among these rich men was the youngest one. His name was Chaik, and he was only 28 years old, but he had more money than men. Twice his age. He was handsome like a movie star, but there was something in his eyes that wasn't quite right, like he thought money could buy anything in the world. For many months, Chaik watched Oge. He noticed how she never asked for tips like the other maids. He saw how she helped old Mama Josephine, the cook, even when it wasn't her job. He watched how she saved every coin she earned, never spending money on pretty clothes or jewelry for herself. "That girl is different," he told himself. "She's not like the other women who throw themselves at me because of my money." The devil's offer. One rainy night, when thunder rolled across the sky like angry drums and lightning flashed like angry spirits, Oge was cleaning the dining room alone. All the other maids had gone home, but she stayed late because she needed extra money. Her mother's cough was getting worse, and the village medicine man said only expensive hospital medicine could save her. Suddenly, Chaik appeared in the doorway like a shadow. In his hand was a black bag that looked very heavy. "Oge," he said in a voice as smoothly as honey, but as dangerous as a snake's whisper. Oge looked up from polishing the table, her heart beating fast like a frightened bird's wings. "Good evening, sir. I didn't know you were still here. I stayed to talk to you." He walked closer, and Oge could smell his expensive perfume. "I know about your mother." The cleaning cloth fell from Oge's hands. How did this rich man know about her family's troubles? "She's very sick, isn't she?" Chaik continued. "The doctors at the big hospital could make her well again. But hospital medicine costs a lot of money." Tears started to fill Oge's eyes like water filling a cup. "Yes, sir. But I'm working hard. I'm saving every naira I can." Chaik opened the black bag and Oge gasped. Inside was more money than she had ever seen in her whole life. There were so many notes that they couldn't even fit properly in the bag. "This money could save your mother's life," he said. "It could pay for the best doctors, the best medicine, the best hospital room. Your mother could live for many more years." Oge stared at the money, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might jump out of her chest. What do you want from me?" Chika's smile was beautiful and terrible at the same time. "Just one night. Spend one night with me and all this money is yours." The longest night. That night felt like it lasted a whole year instead of just a few hours. Oge felt like she was walking in a bad dream, moving through beautiful rooms that felt like a prison. She kept thinking about her mother's gentle hands braiding her hair, about the stories her mother used to tell her about brave princesses who always made the right choices. Sometimes good people had to make terrible choices to save the ones they loved. When morning came with its golden light, Chaik was already dressed in his expensive suit. He gave Oge the bag of money without looking at her, as if she had become invisible. "This never happened," he said in a cold voice. "We never talk about this again." Then he left, walking out of her life as easily as someone walking out of a room. Oge sat alone, holding the bag of money that felt heavier than a bag of stones. She had saved her mother's life, but she felt like something inside her had died. The growing secret. Oge used the money to take her mother to the best hospital in the city. The doctors gave Mama medicine that worked like magic, making her cough go away and bringing color back to her cheeks. For the first time in months, Mama smiled her real smile again. "My daughter," Mama said, holding Oge's hand in her thin fingers, "where did you get money for such expensive medicine?" I worked extra jobs," Mama. Oge lied, her heart breaking with each word. She couldn't tell her mother the truth. It would hurt her more than any sickness. But 6 weeks later, Oge discovered something that made her world turn upside down like a spinning top. She was pregnant. The baby growing inside her belonged to Chaik, the man who had treated her like she didn't matter. The cruel whispers. When the other maids found out about Oge's pregnancy, they whispered about her like buzzing bees. "Look at Miss Perfect now," sneered Adana. "Acting so good and holy, but she's just like any other girl who throws herself at rich men. I heard she was sleeping with all the master's friends," lied another maid. "That's how she got pregnant." The whispers followed Oge everywhere like dark clouds following the sun. Even when she tried to ignore them, the words hurt like thorns in her heart. Chief Emeka called her to his office, his face angry like a storm cloud. "I cannot have a pregnant girl working in my house," he said. "It's a bad example. You must leave immediately." Just like that, Oge lost her job. She packed her few belongings in a small bag and walked away from the mansion, carrying Chik's baby, and the shame that everyone said was hers to bear. The birth of light. 9 months later, in the small room she shared with her mother, Oge gave birth to the most beautiful baby boy. When she first held him in her arms, all the pain and sadness seemed to melt away like ice in the sun. "What will you call him?" asked Mama, who was now healthy but still weak. Oge looked at her son's perfect little face and smiled for the first time in months. "His name is Bright," she said, "because even though he was born from a dark time, he is the light of my life." Mama cried happy tears. "He is a gift from God," she said. "A beautiful gift." Life became very hard for Oge and baby Bright. Every morning, Oge would tie Bright to her back with a colorful wrapper and go out to sell oranges on the street. The sun was hot, the traffic was noisy. Some days she sold many oranges and could buy rice and fish for dinner. Other days, when it rained or when there were too many orange sellers, she barely sold anything at all. When Bright was old enough to walk, he would toddle beside her, his little hand holding tight to her dress. He was such a happy child, always laughing and playing even though they had no money for toys. "Mama," little Bright would say, "why do we live in such a small room when other children live in big houses?" Oge would lift him onto her lap and kiss his forehead. "Because my little star, our small room is filled with love, and love makes any place feel like a palace." When Bright turned 3, Oge saved enough money to buy a small wooden table. She set up a fruit stand under a big tree at the market. Now she could sell oranges, bananas, and mangoes to people walking by. Bright would sit beside her, helping to arrange the fruits in pretty piles. He learned to count by counting oranges, and he learned colors by sorting the fruits. 1 orange, 2 oranges, 3 oranges. He would sing happily. People loved to buy from Oge because she was always honest, always kind, and her little boy made them smile. Even though they were still poor, life felt a little easier now. Every night, Oge would count the money they earned. After buying food and paying for their room, there was never much left. But she was proud because every naira came from honest work. When Bright was 4 years old, something strange started happening. Every Tuesday and Friday, a big, shiny black car would stop at Oge's fruit stand. The driver was a man in nice clothes who always bought many fruits. "Good afternoon, sister," he would say with a warm smile. "Give me your best oranges and mangoes." He always paid with new, crisp money and never asked for change, even when Oge tried to give it to him. He was polite and kind, but Oge couldn't understand why such a rich man would buy from her small stand when there were bigger, fancier fruit sellers in the market. "Mama," Bright said one day, "I like the nice man in the big car. He has kind eyes like you." Oge smiled but felt curious. "Yes, he is very nice. I wonder why he always comes to our stand." One Friday afternoon, when the sun was hot and the market was busy, Bright saw the black car coming. He clapped his hands and started running toward it before Oge could stop him. "Come back," Oge called, running after her son. But the man had already gotten out of his car. He bent down to catch little Bright, who jumped into his arms like they were old friends. As the man lifted Bright up, laughing at the child's joy, his face came into the bright sunlight. Oge stopped running. Her heart stopped beating. Her whole world stopped spinning. It was him, Chaik, the man from the mansion. The man who had given her money for one terrible night. The father of her son. For 5 long years, she had not seen his face except in her dreams and nightmares. But there he was, holding their son, and neither of them had known it. "You," she whispered, her voice shaking like a leaf in the wind. Chik's face went white like he had seen a ghost. His eyes grew wide with shock and fear. The confident smile disappeared from his face like clouds covering the sun. Little Bright, still in the man's arms, looked from his mother to the stranger with confusion. "Mama, why do you look scared?" Uncle is nice. The truth comes out. That evening, after Bright had fallen asleep on their small bed, Chike came back. This time, he didn't come in his big car. He walked to their tiny room like a man carrying a heavy load on his shoulders. I didn't know, he said, sitting on the wooden stool outside their door. His expensive clothes looked strange in their poor neighborhood. About the boy. I promise you, I didn't know you had my child. Oge stood in the doorway, her arms crossed. She had spent 5 years thinking about what she would say if she ever saw him again, but now all those words seemed to have flown away like birds. Would it have mattered if you knew? She asked. Chike looked down at his hands. For the first time since she had known him, he looked ashamed. I need to be sure, he said quietly. I need to know if he's really my son. Look at him, Oge said, her voice strong despite her tears. Look at his face, his smile, the way he laughs. He has your eyes, your nose, your stubbornness. He is your son in every way that matters. But Chike shook his head. I need proof. A test from the hospital. The hospital visit. 3 days later, Oge took Bright to a big, clean hospital in the city. A nice nurse took a tiny bit of blood from Bright's arm. The little boy was very brave, even though it hurt a little. Mama, why does the doctor need my blood? Bright asked as they rode the bus home. Sometimes, little one, grown-ups need doctors to help them understand things that children already know in their hearts, Oge explained, holding him close. The nurse said they would have to wait 1 week for the results. It was the longest week of Oge's life. She couldn't eat properly, couldn't sleep well, and kept wondering what would happen when the truth was finally written on paper. The paper that changed everything. When the results came, they were written on important-looking paper with the hospital's stamp. The words were big and complicated, but they all meant one simple thing. Bright was definitely Chike's son. Chike stared at the paper for a long time, his hands shaking slightly. My son, he whispered. I have a son. For the first time since Oge had known him, Chike looked like he might cry. All these years I had a child and I didn't even know. All these years you raised him alone. Yes, Oge said simply. I raised him with love, and love was enough. The next day, Chike came back with papers and promises. He wore his best suit and brought flowers like men do when they want to marry a woman. Oge, he said, getting down on one knee like they do in movies, marry me. Be my wife. I will give you everything, a big house, beautiful clothes, servants to cook and clean for you. Bright will go to the best schools, have the best toys, and wear the best clothes. You will never be poor again. But Oge looked down at this rich, handsome man kneeling in the dust of her neighborhood, and something inside her felt sad instead of happy. Stand up, she said gently. This is not right. Chike stood up, confusion written all over his face. What do you mean? I'm offering you everything any woman could want. Oge took a deep breath. Around her, the neighbors leaned closer to hear what she would say. Even little Bright, who was playing with a stick nearby, stopped to listen. You want to marry me because you feel guilty, she said, her voice clear and strong. You want to marry me because you think money can fix what happened 5 years ago. But I am not a broken thing that needs to be fixed with gold. The neighbors gasped. No one could believe that this poor woman was saying no to such wealth. I am not a problem to be solved, Oge continued. I am not a debt to be paid. I am a woman who has learned to stand on her own feet, to build her own life, and to find her own way. Chike stared at her like he was seeing her for the first time. In his world, money was the answer to every problem. No one had ever said no to his wealth before. Then what do you want? He asked, genuinely confused. I want you to be a good father to Bright, Oge said. Not because you have to, but because you want to. Not because you owe me anything, but because he is your son, and he deserves to know his father. What happened next surprised everyone, including Oge herself. Instead of getting angry or walking away, Chike sat down on the ground, right there in the dusty street. He put his head in his hands and stayed quiet for a long time. When he looked up, his eyes were different. Softer. More real. You're right, he said. I was trying to buy forgiveness. I was trying to use money to make myself feel better about what I did. From that day forward, Chike began to visit regularly. But not as someone trying to fix a problem. He came as a father learning to love his son, while Bright climbed all over him like a little monkey. He told Bright stories about faraway places, and listened with wonder as Bright told him about the insects he had found and the games he had invented. Slowly, carefully, like planting seeds in good soil, Chike began to help Oge build a better life. Not as charity, but as a partnership. Not as payment for guilt, but as investment in their son's future. He found them a clean, safe apartment with 2 bedrooms and a kitchen that had running water. It wasn't a mansion, but it was a palace compared to their tiny room. He enrolled Bright in a good school where the boy could learn to read and write, where he could play with other children, and discover that he was very smart. Most importantly, he helped Oge start her own business. Not a fruit stand, but a real shop where she could sell beautiful fabrics, colorful head ties, and handmade jewelry. Now I am not just surviving, Oge told her mother one evening as they sat together watching Bright play in their small garden. Now I am living. The wise mother's peace. Mama lived to see her daughter become a successful businesswoman, and her grandson started school. My daughter, Mama said one quiet evening, you have become wiser than I ever was. You learned something that many women never learn. What is that, Mama? You learned that a woman's worth doesn't come from the man who wants her or the money he offers. It comes from her own choices, her own work, and her own strength. Mama passed away peacefully in her sleep 2 years later, but she died knowing that her daughter had not just survived, she had triumphed. Oge's business grew and prospered. Women came from far and wide to buy from her shop because they knew she was honest and fair. Mike remained in their lives, but not as Oge's husband. He was Bright's father, taking him on trips, teaching him about business, showing him that with education and hard work, a person could achieve anything. Why didn't you marry my father? Bright asked one day when he was 10 years old and beginning to understand the adult world. Oge thought carefully before answering, as she always did with important questions. Because, my son, love and marriage are gifts that must be freely given, not payments for debts. Your father is a good man who learned to be better, but that doesn't mean we were meant to be husband and wife.